Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I tell you, it's your business to be kind of interested in what's happening out there in the political and national front. I wrote a column this week, just came out, or actually just last week, rather, in Huffington Post, my regular column. That's nothing new, but this was on why conservatives are beginning to change their views of the death penalty. Yes, exactly. And I'm among those conservatives. I have long been a hardcore advocate. I even worked in the 1980s for a coalition to try to bring the death penalty to Michigan, which never had the death penalty except for on federal cases. And it's interesting to see my own evolution, which I talked about. State of Nebraska, because of a coalition of conservative state senators, they were able to overturn Nebraska's law on the death penalty. It's really fascinating to see the strange bedfellows that made it possible to make it happen. So it's an interesting column. If you put in Kevin Price, Huffington Post, a link will pop up, and it's my most recent article. But I'd love for you to comment at that article of how your views have changed or haven't changed and what you think a conservative position is on that. Sigmund, what is your thoughts on the death penalty?
I used to be a big advocate for the death penalty, and I would say that over the last couple of years, I've started to soften myself because I think that, there's always a question as to whether or not the court got it right, that the prosecutor got it right, and they've got the right person behind bars awaiting a death sentence. Number two, it is such a long, arduous,
expensive,
inefficient process of appeals, and it's ongoing for 20 years or more. I mean, it goes on forever. And the taxpayers literally waste millions and billions over time. And so there's that aspect of it. And also it's rough on the families of the victims because they oftentimes have to keep getting pulled in, into the process. And it's unfortunate all the way around. And ultimately, Kevin, it's not necessary at this point because okay, you're taking somebody and you're ending their life. Well, if you're keeping them off the streets forever, what's the difference? They're not going to harm anybody. Right. A lot of these people are, when you're on death row, you're in solitary confinement, administrative segregation, what they call it, ADSEG. Well, there are plenty of guys who aren't on death row that are in ADSEG too. So I don't see the real upside to it anymore.
Yeah, me either. And, the reality is that through all of the passion, almost religious passion about the power of DNA, we saw all kinds of people who were convicted through DNA that some of whom were killed, who we found out later, the DNA was less than perfect. And so I don't know how many lives can we afford to allow die because we messed up this process. I don't think we can afford any.
Well, but as a conservative, especially a fiscal conservative, you got to look at the whole process and you got to weigh the beans, and you got to say, it's becoming so expensive. Is it really worth it? And that then brings me to something else I'm sure you'll talk about at a later date, which is we got too many laws on the books and we got too many people being prosecuted for these things, and the whole system, like we talked to that gentleman this week who was wrongly accused, and the whole system seems broken. Mm-hmm. And the death penalty just seems like a slap in the face, on top of everything else about this broken system.
Exactly right. Well, I think it's. I was surprised to see me write it. I was a little reluctant even as I wrote it, but I think it's timely, and I think it makes sense, and I think it. For those who believe in a free society, I for one am really concerned about a society where we have roughly 5% of the population, and more accurately, 22% of the world's known prison population. PolitiFact has done the research. That's a reality. That's disconcerting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, that means there's a lot more people that are in there for reasons that probably shouldn't be.
Especially the privatization of prisons, where it's actually a big business now. There are more prisons being built, and the corporations are actually the ones that are benefiting from it. So you have to wonder what's driving that, what's feeding that, and is it really justice, or is it financial gain. And if that's the case, we certainly don't need to be playing that game.
Yep, I agree with you on that. All right, well, that's our take. I would love for you to simply go to Google, put in Kevin Price, Huffington Post. You'll see it's my most recent article. And give me your comments. I'd love to hear them. Meanwhile, when we come back, we're going to have much more for you. I do want to remind you, though, best content here shows up over there at usdatareview.com. This is The Price of Business.